Yo, 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 what is going on, IK Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today we are back. We're going to be giving you guys a little bit of an insight here into KvK 10, again, just to show you who we have in our block, as I know it always starts off here with the 1. I wish it would just default, but again, probably going to be a suggestion, I'm sure with many others that we've been seeing quite a few players, not only on the official IK Discord, but even on ours, providing what I really have been seeing as good, valuable suggestions for the most part. Now for our block, right, we have 73 through 80. As you can see here, we are bottom middle. Some of the other powerhouses pretty much include like 78 and 74, which you can see in the number 5 and number 7 position. As far as for overall power we've kind of accumulated so far. Now, with how the map is going, right, so Zone 1s have opened. And the interesting thing, we've been seeing this a lot even from the official IK Discord, in their KvK chat room, for those of you that like to peruse that, is we've been seeing a lot of other screenshots from other KvKs for the first 12 that are happening in this trial season, where we have kind of like some complete takeovers. And I'll actually show you an example here of one other, and I don't know exactly which one this is from, but you could see here, or excuse me, I should say, this is from the 66 KvK block. And you can see, right, like basically 2 servers have taken over, right, the entire map, pretty much on Zone 1. This can be very, demoralizing for a lot of the players and servers that are initially starting out, at least when it comes to kind of the first timers, right? For veteran KvK players, and again, I say veteran, but usually there's always like an asterisk here, because it also depends on your current knowledge and experience level in KvKs, and if you've done comebacks before, if you know that these things are possible to do as well. Right, depending, of course, on your matchup and how organized and coordinated you are, right, has a lot to do with it. And so, again, that's just one there that we were able to see. And before we officially kind of really start diving into everything, of course, make sure you guys do sub, like, ring that notification bell. And of course, if you want to be a part of our conversation, you can join the Discord, which you can find in the pinned comment below or in the description. Now, for how we have things playing out here in KvK 10, right, you can see here that our zone actually at this point has been pretty much overran. And I want to share first up, because I think we initially talked about what some of the groups are. You can see it's kind of like a 2 main alliances, right, which are the 2 big powerhouses. You have 78 and 74. These 2 servers, right, amongst kind of the top 3 along with us in 79, ended up going for the opposite union. So we have one ally union, right, which is 78, 74, 75, and 73, right? And then you had us in 79. We worked with, well, they're not there now, but sorry, because I can't click on a city. Let me go here. Then it is 76, which is going to be here in the number 8 position, 77 in the number 6 position, and then 80 here. And shout out to Drunk Monk and Breaker and Detta Franco. I mean, they've just been great so far with us coordinating. We actually had a voice meeting with our group, which was actually pretty cool, just to talk about some initial strategy. But the challenge is that, usually when you're kind of going through diplomacy meetings like that, or KvK Diplo meetings, or I should say union meetings in this case, because we're a little more advanced at that point, just from where we currently are, it is one of those things where, you can talk about kind of broad general strategy, but a lot of that, and we even wrote up mails for our union group, right? So we wrote up like a 5-part alliance mail they can send out to them. We kind of provided some tips and best practices that they can apply, but a lot of what that comes down to is dissemination. Right, how are you disseminating that information between your alliances, right? Are you sending those mails out? Are you setting up chat rooms to answer questions? Are you sending those via Discord? Are you potentially sending some, but maybe just broader, vague things, like just kind of general tips via server mails? Are you trying to get people in voice calls, right? A lot goes into it. Now, what we factored is that there was about a 300 mil difference between 300K difference between the alliances themselves. And so what we factored is it was about it is 300 mil. My apologies. I'm trying to figure my math out correctly here. But we were at, I think, 1.2. Well, no. Oh, yeah, because it was combined. Excuse me. So what we did is we kind of like combined the active alliances and their power. And then we figured, okay, here's the active alliances that are in each union set. And so it was about 1.55 billion to 1.22, 1.25 billion on ours, right? So that was 78, 74, 73, 75, right? So there's about 300 mil difference there as far as an overall power. So not that much, but again, right? Some things that we ended up hearing early on, and this is very standard and pretty typical for what you would usually see in KvKs, is that sometimes you will have servers that will communicate and reach out to become kind of KvK allies early, right before the server starts. Now, for KvK1, this is pretty easy to do, right? Because we kind of more or less knew what the groupings were going to be, right? When KvK season, for trial season, when season 1 comes out, right? The assumption is that they're going to be matching us based on MMR. So you're not really going to be able to do the kind of early diplomacy, right? Most of the diplomacy is probably going to happen at reset, if not shortly after, right? Kind of almost like players, like sports players that are being reached out to by other teams are taking meetings, right, like right after a certain time. And it's kind of like that. So, that's most likely what we're really going to be seeing, and you're not really going to have this kind of early ahead notice. I mean, I've seen some KvK groups where they had allies formed a week, 2, 3 weeks in advance before that people were talking to. Right, now this, again, is easy. Even if you look at a game like Rock, right, you can do this for your KvK1 because it goes off your continent group. So you already know, and you could even start having early conversations, and this is something that we did as well when I was running jump groups there. We would already reach out and kind of have reps that we had spoken to and were already in contact with as friends, just to keep communication lines open, right, to kind of talk about future KvK allyships in general. And usually you do that because you want to see how, again, you just want to have a point of contact over there. You don't know how those servers or kingdoms are going to develop, but it's just nice to already have an in the event that those situations still stick out, right? So for a trial season, especially if we end up seeing those for newer servers, right, they're going to have that trial season. They'll most likely have more or less a pretty established group, right, which is kind of in their 8-server grouping, which you can kind of add that based on here. And there might be some adjustments. We saw that in a few of the KvK groups, but for the most part, it was pretty much an 8-server set, starting from 0, from 1 to 8, and then so on and so forth. Based on where we're at now, right, what I will say is, and again, this isn't necessarily going to be like a suggestion feedback video, but just more of an update and kind of how our KvK 10 group is going. I actually have really still been enjoying KvK, right? There's been a few fights that have happened so far, right there. One of the things I'm realizing and noticing quite a bit is that you're seeing some players that are kind of going back and forth between their home kingdom and KvK, whether it's as a way to recuperate, or if, for example, they have just, some people probably have lost some motivation, especially if you look at some of the groups here, and you're seeing that, and again, this is not bad, because this is still for servers that, are semi-active, right? It's just that they're kind of union, right, has the majority of the cities. One of the things I do want to point out, to be very clear on, is that, right, this is not something, and this is just good advice for those of you if this is your first KvK, right, or if your first kind of KvK/SVS experience in a kingdom builder, is that the way that IK is set up, at least in my opinion, is not to assume that because a server or servers have all these cities, right, or they have a bunch of thermal towers and you don't have any thermal towers, right, that it's over. Trust me when I say it is not. Right, just like rogue tendencies that you would usually have on your server, there is a lot that you can still do, even if you're trying to come back. Now, of course, again, there will be an asterisk there, because most of the time what it comes down to is you just need to at least have some players, a part of your group or your server, that can challenge some of the top players. And it doesn't mean that you need to be at the exact troop power level. You can be, we've had situations where we've had someone that's like 15k troop power less than the number 1, number 2, number 3 troop power players on our kingdom, right? And we are still able to zero them, right, port them out, right, have their prosperity down to 0 from that, of course, and, just still be effective. There are ways that you can do this, right? And we've organized this with some of our players. right? One of those ways I think is just kind of utilizing the rally system in addition to some of the solo hits that you can do, right? Doing some finer tinkering, right? If you need to kind of customize marches or talk skill setups to counter, right? There are things that you can do. You just kind of have to think outside the box. Thankfully, it's nice to see that after we put it into action a few times, if not maybe more than a few times, and we're seeing good results, I think this definitely gives options to servers and players that, might be a little more on the fence. But again, when it comes to how the map looks, right, my big piece of advice here is do not assume that just because you do not own any cities or you don't have thermal towers that it is over for you, right? You do not know how an entire KvK is going to play it. I've seen KvKs where you have a union, and then the moment that you get to Zone 2, and or even Zone 3, you'll have disagreements, or people want this, or people want that, right? You can easily have a situation here where, 74 and 78, take over the entire Zone 2. That could be something that happens. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But this is an example of things that I've seen in previous KvKs and SVSs where, you might have one or two of the servers, right, in a union that are the stronger ones. And, some of their players or some of the leads or even officers might think, well, why do we have to share with everyone, right? Why don't we just take it all, right? And then maybe for Zone 3, it's a fight between 74 and 78, right? So who knows if, for example, 73 and 75 get pushed out, right? That might change the landscape. Maybe some of them might, look for other ally ships because they want to be able to fight for the middle, or just have a nice fight, right, where they can keep going. Because things like this can really easily become kind of more of a passive farming, right? It's like you do a lot of your fighting initially, and this is one of the, I'm sure, suggestions many people will hint to about opening Zone 1, is that when you do, and I will just say one thing here, right? Even though I will be making a separate video on this that really kind of talks about updates specifically around KvK and things for 1.8, is that when you open Zone 1 like this, it basically has all the fighting pretty much happening within the first 24 to 48 hours. And most of the time, especially because you can gate jump across to any Zone 1, you pretty much put yourself in a position where you arguably could have one server that just takes over everything within a 1 to 2 day period, right? Or two servers that take over everything, or in some cases, right, just the union, right, one of the allies that take over the server. And then for the remaining of them, right, most of the players might just think, okay, well, man, that's it. I'll just go back to my home kingdom and farm there, and then, wait for the next KvK. Maybe they'll come back intermittently, or periodically when zones open, or maybe other objectives that might come around. But for the most part, I will say overall, at least visually, it is pretty demoralizing. I've seen this again happen. I'm sure many of you have as well if you've played KvKs or SVSs, right, in situations like this. Even though, right, my opinion here is that, right, you shouldn't be able to go adjacently. You should be able to go into a Zone 2. I think if that happened, it actually would have been a lot better, right? I actually think that it would have been a fun fight. Even if it turned out that even if the same matchups were still there, right? This is how it needs to be. Now, don't get me wrong. I love tests, and I think that the fact that they're doing a trial season and they're just whether they're trying progressive things or if this was just the first idea to try, right? That is fine. It's a trial season. It's not things I'm hoping will change. But one thing I will say is that I myself, I think that if you're going to open up Zone 1s, you need to make it to where you can only go to an adjacent zone and not past that. An example of this would be here at us in 79. We could only go to 76 or we could only go to 73. But these gates, right, if it's 2 gates or more, then those are locked, right? I think that's one way you can pretty much limit the area, right? So what that would mean is that even if we went over here, the most we could be fighting would be 75 and 73. If we went to 76, the most we could fight is 76 and 74, right? And then same thing, if it's 74, they could only go to 78, or they could only go to they could only go to 76, right? Because 74 is right here. So I think those are some things that you could do to mitigate some of the damage. But in my opinion, I'm one of the people who, in these situations, even though I love tests, after seeing how this is played out along with other servers, I'm really now a bigger believer of like, hey, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And again, that doesn't mean not try things. That doesn't mean not test things. I still think that's great. But in this situation, I would love to see how it plays out, kind of going along a standard format, right? Because I think most people love that, and I think there's a lot of mitigation that helps out as well. right? It allows for us servers that are in the middle position, right? You can go left or right. In this situation, right, you could only at any zone 2 have up to 3 servers fighting in it, right? Some might have 2, some might have 3, but it allows for you to still progress going forward to the middle. And it, in my opinion, gives the most amount of servers the best chances to progress not only into Zone 2, but then possibly into Zone 3. Whereas when you open up Zone 1, it basically, you can arguably cut the participation in KvK and the overall player engagement in half immediately, or very soon, right, shortly after it opens, to where players will not be able to enjoy, or I should say a good amount of players will not be able to enjoy later/endgame content. And I think that is really important because there's a lot more to do in KvK that is beyond Zone 1, right? Zone 1, this is the appetizer. We haven't even got, or I'm sorry, this is the soup. We haven't even got to the appetizer, the main course, right, dessert, even after. So I think those are some things to take away. But again, again, I'm going to reiterate this one last time. My big thing for players, right, is that if this is your first KvK or SVS in a Kingdom Builder, even if you've only played one, right, do not, right, my hope is here, right, do not take that if your server just has cities, right, like this, or you have 1 or 2 alliances that just take over, 1 or 2 servers that take over everything, or even if your group lost against the other allies group, right, do not just assume that because you do not have cities or you don't have thermal towers that it's all over. Trust me when I say it is not. I have seen, and I'm sure some of you also have seen in KvK groups, people come back from what they might view as visual deficits, right? And even sometimes, territory and resource deficits. And so, I think there's a lot of things that you could still do. And also, my last piece here is use this opportunity as a way to test. Use this opportunity as a way to try things. This is a trial season, right? This is not KvK 1 where you're going to get matched up against other servers based on your MMR rating, right, or your proposed MMR rating, right? So really take advantage of the time that you have now to do a lot of tests, to try things out, so that way you can be more and better prepared for future KvKs. With that being said, that is pretty much it for me today. I just kind of wanted to do a quick overview and update on kind of how we're doing. Again, I am still excited and happy to keep trying things out and eventually participate more too as well, whenever I'm not super busy just managing and then trying to do content. But with that being said, I would love to hear from you. How is your KvK going if you are in one of the 12 KvK blocks, right? Is anything I've said kind of makes sense? Have you noticed some of these things yourselves, right? Are some of you taking advantage of doing tests and trials for anything that you're able to experience, right, and that you want to find out, and maybe just how your KvK overall is going, right? How do you feel about things opening up in Zone 1? Would you rather have it kind of be more of a standard progression format where you just would have been able to go into the Zone 2 and then eventually Zone 3 and then kind of Zone 1's opening last, right, which is kind of more standard for what we usually see? Let me know anything and everything you guys are thinking down there in the comments below. That is it for me. Until next time, we'll catch y'all later.